glasses when everyone's not.
I don't even know what this is.
L'chaim.
Oh wow.
Siegelman, if you know, I don't know, that's your word about.
What's the bracha on such a thing?
Mizona and Shahakol.
And maybe also Shachianu?
I would think it's shahakol, the little wafer is shahakol.
They're in Tillman's and Whitwell, business area.
Is this
That's
is
beautiful.
Mizono? No, the top is a cookie. It's a lotus cookie. I'm assuming there's Mizonos, then Shahako, and then
Can be.
Mizonos, and then Shahako.
Breaded fish.
Yeah, that's not a distance.
I don't know.
Zonas isn't tough unless it's like,
Right.
it's there as a binding.
Do you want the Shahako?
It's not a binding.
Okay,
this
I'll
is-
definitely take the Shahako.
Okay. So
You're happy.
Kedarkinu Bakodesh, we're going to start with, and instead of a quote, this is actually going to be a poem. And I will leave it to you to figure out what, if anything, it has to do with what we're going to be discussing. This is a poem by Wallace Stevens, early 20th century. And it goes as follows. Call the roller of big cigars, the muscular one, and bid him whip in kitchen cups concupiscent curds. Let the wenches dawdle in such dress as they used to wear, and let the boys bring flowers in last month's newspapers. Let B be finale of seam. The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream. Take from the dresser of deal, lacking the 3 glass knobs, that sheet on which she embroidered fantails once, and spread it so as to cover her face, and if her horny feet protrude, they come to show how cold she is and dumb. Let the lamp affix its beam. The only emperor is the emperor of ice cream. That is The Emperor of Ice Cream by Wallace Stevens.
So you're arguing
You're way
that
over
that
my head.
should have been in Tanakh rather than Shir HaShirim. I'm just saying, it's pretty appealing.
What does it mean?
I don't think it quite comes to Shir HaShirim, but I mean, it's a good contender. Not gonna lie.
It's very interesting. What does it mean?
It's like, it's describing a carnival.
Interesting. Okay. Other takers?
It's a guy who had too many drugs.
Guy who had too many drugs. Would you believe it's awake? The second paragraph is describing the corpse, and they're pulling the sheet to cover the corpse. And the first part is they're actually serving ice cream. Apparently, it's a thing at Irish wakes.
They're big on dairy. It's not.
They're big on dairy.
No, they seriously are. They're like, I didn't know this.
Could be. I don't know. There, the people who analyze these things will talk to you about the boys bringing flowers in last month's newspapers. These are like allusions to things that have died or have been in the past. I think part of the reason it intrigued me so much is because it is very hard to read it on its surface because it's almost abstract, right? You don't really know unless you read it maybe a couple of times what it's even talking about. There's meaning there, but it's hard to dig out the meaning because when you go from one statement to the next, you're not sure how they all kind of ladder up to meaning.
What is
And
this called?
the Emperor of Ice Cream.
What is the meaning?
He's describing a wake. He's
I understand that,
describing.
but what is the
In
meaning?
poetic terms.
So that's
You
open
say-
for.
You say there's meaning there, so obviously there's something meaning to you. What is the meaning to you?
So that's a fair question. I think I fixated on the fact that he calls this idea of the Emperor of Ice Cream, that like there is something triumphant almost about what's going on in this situation that like supersedes death, and that's what he's trying to describe as like the fact that you can celebrate means that like life is triumphing, is the emperor over what they're experiencing.
Eating ice cream all night. I feel like I'm in mourning. Leave me alone.
The Emperor of Ice Cream.
So in your mind, the emperor is life?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, everyone's going to have their own
Asking
take.
you your take.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
This is important to you because you chose it.
I did.
So
Fair enough. So what I wanted to talk about today is sort of layers of meaning, and I have handouts. I noticed that the Artscroll quote in the front here is sort of hard to read, so I will read it for you. Actually, I think I'm one short.
no, you are not Shimmy and I are sharing.
Fantastic.
I really don't like their comments on it, by the way.
So they actually
The whole idea where they're like, oh, it would be frivolous and irresponsible for someone to read this like in its literal meaning. And I'm like, no,
Right.
don't say that for me. You do your translation thing and your commentary thing, and that's fine. But don't tell me that your way is the only way to read it.
Okay, so
I don't like that.
I will. Yeah, me neither.
I'm sorry.
So I'm reading now from the Artscroll Sitter. I don't know which edition this is, but they include Shir HaShirim before Kabbalah Shabbos, and they say as follows: as the entire gamut of Talmudic and rabbinic literature relating to Shir HaShirim makes clear, this highly emotional, seemingly sensuous song is an allegory. As such, a literal translation would be misleading, even false, because it would not convey the meaning intended by King Solomon, the composer.
Sorry, I call BS.
The Artscroll translation follows a commentary of Rashi, and a full commentary may be found in Artscroll Shir HaShirim, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and if you want to see, there's more extensive and also highly elliptical quotes. Yeah, they like, there's a whole bunch of ellipses here when they actually want to quote from Rashi. You get like very selective quoting.
Right.
And
Right.
then
This is such a misleading paragraph.
Well,
it
we're-
annoys me.
We're
Seemingly sensual? What do you mean seemingly? Seemingly right.
I'm just gonna count the ellipses.
Clearly, to you, it seems.
There's at least 4 times that they kind of cut out the translation of Rashi's introduction. So we're gonna read Rashi's full introduction, which you have in front of you, courtesy of Rabbi Aryeh Clapper. I will just point out that Rashi doesn't usually write an introduction to a book.
He did with
The Chumash, Zechariah, Shir HaShirim, and basically that's it. So if Rashi felt the need to write an introduction, it's because the contents require a framework, I think, in order to understand them. So without further ado, so Rashi says, Achas diber Elokim shtaim zu shamati. So this is a quote from Chazal. I'm actually going to I'll read the paragraph of Hebrew, and then we'll do the paragraph of English. Mikra echad yotze lekama ta'amim v'sof davar, ein lecha mikra yotze midei pshuto. Umashma, v'af al pi shedibru hanavim divreihem bedugma, tzarech liyashev hadugma al ofaneha v'al sidra, kmo shehamikraos sudurim ze achar ze. V're'iti l'sefer hazeh kama midrashay agada, yesh sodrim kol hasefer hazeh b'medrash echad, v'yesh mefuzarim mikama midrashay agada, mikraos levadam, ve'enam misyashvim al lashon hamikra v'seder hamikros, v'yamarti belibi litfos mashmaut hamikra liyashay biuram al sidram, v'hamedrashos mirabosenu ekva'am medrash umedrash ish bimkomo. So, God spoke one, these two I heard. One unit of scripture goes off into multiple meanings, but in the end, the pasuk never leaves its plain sense. And I added an emphasis there. That's a famous statement from Chazal, and we're going to dig into exactly what that means momentarily. But what that means for our purposes is that a pasuk has to have a plain sense. Pshat, right? A pasuk has to have pshat. It has to mean something. There has to be some, when you read the words, they have to have some basic meaning, as opposed to what we just saw, which is you cannot, the pshat is false. That I don't believe Rashi says. We'll keep reading and see, maybe you can dispute that with me. Indicating, even though the prophet spoke in metaphor, one must make the metaphor accord with its aspects and arrangements, just as the units of scripture are arranged one after another. So the way I'm reading this, and again, please feel free to disagree, is that when you read a regular pasuk, there's continuity, and that is part of what gives meaning, right? When you read a story about Abraham went and did X, Y, Z, so the reason it has meaning is because all the sentences kind of string together, and they tell a narrative, and you get information from that narrative. No.
But it's only by pasuk, meaning we know ein muktam u'mocher Torah. So you
Yes.
know that things are out of order.
But psukim are not out of order.
Right.
Chapters or
Passages.
thank you, are out of order.
Right. But when it says Abraham got up and saddled his donkey, and then he gets the thing and he hands it to his son. It's not like one happened 20 years after the other.
Right.
Like this is.
Or they happen in reverse order.
Right. Right.
Is that fair?
Okay.
Okay.
And not for nothing. I mean, to me, this is screaming out, Mishle, because Mishle seems like it's not a narrative. It's a bunch of different psukim, that are seeming like pithy sayings, but there's not like an overarching theme of this parak to that parak. Maybe Eshet Chayil.
Okay, fair enough.
Right?
The joke about like the first 3 books in Ksuvim.
No.
So in Tehillim, it's hard to understand the connection of one parak to the next. In Mishle, it's hard to understand the connection of one pasuk to the next. But in Eov, it's hard to understand the connection of one word to the next.
Right. But the point is, I'm just trying to say that, like, what? King Shlomo...
It's Eov.
It's what?
It's Eov.
I'm just saying that...
I've learned Eov.
Right.
But you could learn it pshat the same way as learning this pshat.
Yeah.
True.
I'm just saying that this jives with the way that Mishle goes. Like King Shlomo, if King Shlomo is indeed the author, okay, he can have like a series of things, of very loving metaphors, and they're all kind of strung together, just like Mishle is like a bunch of important stuff that we need to know.
I don't think he's saying that Shir HaShirim is a progressive narrative. That's not what I'm taking from this. I think what he's saying is that just like when there is a progressive narrative, it's there in order to convey meaning. Right. So Shir HaShirim also has to convey some sort of meaning.
Yeah.
It's not just random sentences strung one after the next.
Right.
I think.
Right. There's something there. I'm trying to say that too.
Okay. So let's continue. I've seen several Medrashei Agada on this book. Some arranged the entire book in one Medrash, others scattered in a number of Medrashei Agada solitary verses, and they do not accord with the language of the pasuk and the arrangements of the units. So I said in my heart to grasp the indication of the pasuk and interpret them in accord with their arrangement and the midrashim from our teachers. I will fix each individual medrash in its place. So Rashi, in his commentary, actually does that. He will explain both the pshat, meaning the simple explanation of what do the words mean and what do they mean in context of the narrative itself, in its straightforward understanding, and he will also bring midrashim to explain the metaphor. He does not totally exclude the pshat interpretation and just say it's only metaphor.
What he specifically says is that you should learn it as pshat.
Yes. And then he gives you something even...
Clearly, you didn't translate Rashi.
Well, they in their translation, they excerpted the parts of Rashi they liked. Okay, V'yomer ani. Shira Shlomo Baruch HaKodesh Hasidin Yisrael legalos geula achar geula churban achar churban ulehisonen begalus ze al kvodam harishon uluzkor chiba rishona asher hayu segula lo mikol ha'amim lemor elcha vashuva el ishi harishon ki tov li az me'ata v'yizkeru es chasidov v'es ma'alam asher ma'alu es hatovos asher amar latit lahem ba'achrid hayamim V'yosad sefer hazeh baruach hakodesh baloshon isha tzerura ba'almanos chios. Mishtokekes al ba'ala misrapekes al doda mazkeres ahavas neurim alav umoda al pesha av doda tsarlo b'tzarasa umazkir chazdei neureha v'no yofyo ukishron pualeha bahem anikshar ima ba'ava azel lahodiam ki lo milibo ana v'lo shluchaha shluchin Ki od hi ishto v'hu isha v'hu atid lashuv elaha. And I say, says Rashi, that Shlomo saw via the Holy Spirit that Yisrael would in the future be exiled, exile after exile, destruction after destruction, that they would lament in this exile their original dignity and remember their initial afflictions, that they were his treasure from among all the nations, saying, I will go and return to my first husband. I'm not sure why he translates it as man, but I will go and return to my first husband as it was better for me than now. And they would remember his acts of loving kindness and the offenses that they offended and the goods which he had said he would give them in the end of days. So this is emphasis that I added. But so he, meaning Shlomo, founded this book via the Holy Spirit in the language of a woman bound in living widowhood, yearning for her husband, leaning toward her intimate, reminding him of youthful love and conceding her guilt. Her intimate too suffers in her suffering and recalls her youthful acts of loving kindness and her beauty and her proper deeds, through which he was bound to her in a powerful love to tell them that this is not his plan and her being sent away is not divorce, for she is still his wife and he her husband, and he will in the future return to her. So we were talking about earlier about these two young lovers getting together outside of wedlock. Rashi sees it specifically not that way. He sees it as a woman and her husband who had been separated, but are recalling their youth and planning to get back together, even though they are not together now.
We've watched too many romantic comedies.
Well, so my question to you is, how much of this do you agree with the way Rashi is reading Shir?
Could be. Shivim panim l'Torah, right? It's certainly a valid way of looking at it.
I'm not asking you to invalidate him. I'm asking if you view it the same way as he does.
Doesn't resonate with me that way.
Okay. Other takers? Does Shir sound like
doesn't sound like a man to a wife?
Doesn't sound like a man to a wife.
No.
I think all of us married men might be a little bit jaded.
It doesn't sound like fun nostalgia and recollection. It just like
they don't know each other that well.
They don't know each other that well.
Right. That's a really good point.
Right. There doesn't seem to be any recollection. Right? What Rashi's talking about is, remember when we were young, and it doesn't sound like that's recollection. It sounds like it's their first time.
But again, he's translating this straight out. He's telling you, take it. You should learn pshat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, pshat is good, but this is the way an agadic approach can be on it.
Fair.
Okay, and an agadic approach, by definition, is not pshat.
Right. For sure. For sure.
He's not. You're asking us is, do you read this as pshat? And Rashi's not trying to read this as pshat.
I think he's saying that. No, I agree with you. That the pshat that is in the story he's coloring, I think, the pshat as, if you read it on its surface level, read it as
he's giving it a context.
Yes, but the context he's giving it is a husband and wife who have been separated, right, as opposed to two young lovers who have never been married before. And then he's also saying, yes, there is an agadic level to it, and you have to organize the agadic part in a way that is coherent and makes sense.
I was reading Rashi differently.
Okay.
The latter part of husband wife is more agadic approach.
So the pshat is not husband and wife, and the agada
is the beginning of the agadic is the husband wife.
Okay.
Further from it.
From okay.
Pshat. We
right.
Move away from pshat, and then you can put what you want in.
Right.
And that's what he's doing.
Okay. Interesting. I'll add one more piece of context before we get to the next part, which is you have to take into account when Rashi is writing.
Right. Rashi's writing in the late 12th century.
Rashi's writing in the late 11th century. He's writing during the period of the Crusades.
What?
He's writing during the period of the Crusades.
Right.
And he's dealing with the fact that the Jewish people feel estranged from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right?
He's also writing in France.
Yes, but he's the Gadol Hador. He understands, what is going on broadly.
Okay, and he's also writing in France, where France has perception on marriage and relationships.
True. I think
it might have been very different back in Middle France.
That I don't know, but I certainly believe that there is a message that Rashi in how he approaches Shir HaShirim. There's a message that Rashi is giving to the general Jewish population, which is, you might feel
have faith.
Yeah, have faith. You might feel today, given all the difficulties that are going on with the Crusades, that the Jewish people are estranged from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but just like in Shir HaShirim, they're going to reunite. That holds out hope. I think that's.
But that's not how the story ends. The story ends is get out of here, kid.
Okay, so we'll get to the end of the story, but there's certainly hope. I think that's evoked in Shir HaShirim in general.
Not at the end though. The end just is sort of like a Gainax ending. It's just like, wait a minute, now there's penguins? What?
Okay, you have to wait till we get to structure. We'll talk about that, God willing, I think next week. Okay.
4 weeks.
So what I'd like to do is just understand a little bit more what it means that Ein HaMikra Yotze Midei Pshuto, that every pasuk has to have its simple meaning, because there is room for allegory, right? There are things that don't mean what they say. When I say ayin tachas ayin, that doesn't mean poke the other guy's eye out, even though that's what the words actually mean, right? So how do you know what to read actually literally and what to not read actually literally? So
that's where we have Torah Shabbat.
Oh, very good. So that's exactly what we're going to read now, is the Torah Shabbat Peh. So the Mishnah in Shabbos is what you have, hopefully right below what we were just reading. And the Mishnah says as follows: Lo yetze ha'ish lo b'sayif v'lo b'keshes v'lo b'tris v'lo b'ala v'lo b'romach. So a man's not allowed to go out on Shabbos decked out in these various war accoutrements, right? Sword and bow and shield, etc. V'lo v'im yatsa chayev chatas. And if he goes out on Shabbos wearing any of these things, he's chayev chatas. Rabbi Eliezer Omer tachshitin heinlo. This is like it's an adornment. He's getting dressed up. He's in his finery. It's jewelry, right? The chachamim omrim einam ela legnai. No, you can't have sword jewelry. That's terrible, because remember, eventually we're going to get rid of all of these war implements. Shnamar, as it says, v'kititu charvosehem leitim v'chanisosehem lemazmerot. They're going to beat their swords into plowshares, and the hooks are going to be whatever. Lo yisa goy, right? Spears into pruning hooks. Lo yisa goy el goy cherev lo yilamad od milchama, and then no one is going to take up war against each other anymore. So why would he want to be wearing something to remind us that we're still not in the Yemot HaMashiach? That can't be the ideal of jewelry. Okay, so the Gemara continues. Rabbi Eliezer Omer tachshitin hein lo. So now we're going to delve into what does he mean by the fact that these are tachshitin. Tanai, it's a machlokas. Tanaim amru lo le Rabbi Eliezer v'chima achad the tachshitin hein lo mipnei ma hein betilin limos HaMashiach. You, Rabbi Eliezer, who hold that they are in fact jewelry, why are they going to be batel in limos HaMashiach? Amar lehem lefi sheinam tzrichim, because they're not necessary anymore. Shneimar lo yisa goy el goy cherev, right? V'tehave lenoi ba'alma. So let them just be, don't not be batel, right? Why do you have to get rid of them liyasid level? Why don't you just have them as, you can hang them up on your wall? Amar Abaye, mivi dehavi ashagra b'tahara. It's like having a candle in the middle of the day. It serves no ornamental purpose either, because it's unnecessary. Once something is unnecessary, you can't treat it as if it's an ornament, at least not for the purposes of carrying it out on Shabbos. Okay, why are we reading all this? Amar le Abaye l'Rav Dimi v'amar lo l'Rav Avya v'amar lo Rav Yosef l'Rav Dimi v'amar lo l'Rav Avya v'amar lo Abaye l'Rav Yosef. My time of the Rebbe Eliezer. What is the reason of Rebbe Eliezer? The Amar Tachshit and Heinlo, that who holds that they are jewelry. He actually, it's not just an opinion; it's a pasuk, right? The pasuk says, "Gird your sword upon your thigh, mighty one, your glory and your splendor." Right. So from there you see that a sword is considered an ornament. So it's not like he just made this up. So Amr Le Rav Kahana Lamar Bere de Rav Huna Hi B'divrei Torah Ksiv. No, what are you talking about? That pasuk in Tehillim that we just quoted that says that the sword on your thigh is Hod v'Hadarcha. That's really not talking about a sword. It's talking about Divrei Torah. Having Divrei Torah is Hod v'Hadar. So Amar Le Ein Mikra Yotze Midei Pshuto. No, what do you mean? Even if it's true that you can darshan the pasuk to mean that allegorically, but the pasuk can't escape its basic meaning, which is that an actual sword is actually an adornment and splendor for someone. Okay, so that parak in Tehillim itself is actually very rich with allusions to Shir HaShirim, or I guess because it's David HaMelech, it's really before Shir HaShirim, but the point is there's a lot of overlap in themes and wording from that specific chapter. It's 45 in Tehillim. I don't think we're going to go into that in depth right now. But what you see from here is what? Okay, what do you see from here? What does it mean that ein hamikra yotze midei pshuto?
There's pshat.
There needs to be a literal meaning. It can't be incomprehensible. It can't be like punching bag, cup, phone, paper.
So,
Question?
right. So what you just said, I heard two different things. One is that it has to have a literal meaning, and the other is that it has to be comprehensible. Right? Something can be literal and incomprehensible, and something can be comprehensible and not literal.
Well, things can have a meaning, but be incomprehensible only because you don't have a context for it. Whereas if it's literally just words strung together, then it's not comprehensible.
It doesn't mean anything.
Right. I can try to give you context. Oh, I'm giving you things that are in this room.
Right.
Okay, where are the commas?
Right.
You know what I mean? It has to have some kind of there's a way to understand it. That when I read the words, I can understand what the words are trying to tell me.
Do the words always have to have have to be translated literally?
Mean tekelu farshin. I don't know. Minay.
Right.
Right, those weren't even words.
Right, it's just like
that was gibberish.
Hey, here's a bunch of doom for you guys. Like,
right, figure it out.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there just to make it even more complicated.
What I'm storyline? That was a plot.
Right, plot device.
A plot device.
Still, if it's a message and everybody's like, "What is this message supposed to mean?"
But then what happened?
It was meant to be cryptic.
Right.
In came a Navi and then gave you perspective.
Right.
And now, okay, now I understand it. This is Hashem saying, okay, I've judged you.
Say your prayers.
Right. You're done.
So this seems to be saying that pshat is important. You can't ignore the pshat.
Right. Even if you have a drasha, and the drasha, we're not discounting your drasha either, but it doesn't allow you to remove or falsify the pshat of a pasuk, right? Unless, and I think this is probably the only exception, is where you have a tradition from Chazal that there is no pshat, or not that there is no pshat, but that you should not read the pasuk according to its pshat, like ayin tachas ayin, right? Chazal say ayin tachas ayin does not mean eye for an eye. You might translate it that way, and that is the literal translation, but that is not even the pshat translation of ayin tachas ayin. The pshat of ayin tachas ayin. It's not a drasha or an agada that ayin tachas ayin means pay money.
Right.
It's the literal.
Right, but my understanding of ayin tachas ayin is that statement in and of itself has context. So like Chazal come by, 1,000 years after the Torah is given, whereas in the time that the Torah was given, it was common for example, like if somebody pokes out someone's eye, give them the death penalty.
Yeah.
So the Torah says, no, ayin tachas ayin. The punishment should fit the crime. Only an eye for an eye, only a tooth for a tooth. The punishment, it has to be not vindictive, it has to be mitigatory. It has to be like, there has to be
But then just say
proportionality, money. Right?
But then just say money.
Right.
But the Torah could have just said, kesef tachas ayin.
No, but that's the thing, is the Torah is teaching the idea of proportionality, and it's doing it in the context of the times. But Chazal had to come later and be like, yeah, that's what the Torah was saying at that time. Like, guys, don't go off the deep end and get the wrong idea from this.
So in the midbar, did they actually poke people's eye out?
No, the whole point is, I mean, we had the oral Torah,
right?
But the point is that the Torah is putting the brakes on an idea that may have been prevalent at the time. Like, don't pass your kids through the Malach doesn't make much sense to us. But to the Jews of that time, this is something that was like, that's something that we have to pay attention to. If we're gonna if someone pokes out my eye, I'm gonna kill you now. Like, no. Only an eye, okay? Get it settled. Let's hold back. And so I think that the pshat of that pasuk, there is some literal meaning to that pasuk. It's just that there's context to it. There's context even to that, and that's why I think that Chazal had to come by later and be like, yeah, guys, there's context to that.
Well,
Like
no,
they had
but
to point that out.
They had to come again. Why do we have Torah Shabbat Peh written down? Because he was like, shoot, this isn't working. So you're right, the Dara Midbar, who literally heard Moshe, they were standing at Har Sinai, and they had Moshe Rabbeinu coming and teaching them Torah Shabbat Peh with Torah Shebechsav.
Yeah.
To them, the fact that the Torah said Ayin Tachas Ayin didn't mean anything other than if anything happens, I have to pay for it based off of this. That's what it meant to them.
Right.
But then, as time went on, it's like, well, someone's going to misinterpret this and not understand what this is saying, because the world around us is like, oh, you stole, I'm cutting off your hand.
Right.
You also have the double language involved. And double language usually implies a personal connection to it, so that you have, it's personal to you. So you have Shir HaShirim, it's personal to you, because it's the double language of Shir HaShirim. You have Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is inside the Beit HaMikdash is the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which Bezalel makes. Why is it the only thing Bezalel says that he made was the Aron in there? Because it's something personal to him. He had the personal connection to it.
That's so interesting. The double language means personal to you.
Personal to you. You have the Ayin Tachas Ayin. Again, it's personal. It's not your eye itself. It's your personal approach on it. In this situation,
I've never heard that before. The double language is personal.
The double language makes it. What's Hashem? Melech Machei Melachim.
Yes.
It's a personal God. It's a personal God to each one of us.
Okay, I want to come back to that in 1 second, because I want to talk about the language of Shir HaShirim, that double language.
It's a double language, which makes it personal to all of us, which is probably why, if you think about it, when you don't have any other sefer that has this double language, and Shir HaShirim has this double language to make it personal to each and every one of us. Mm-hmm. And Rashi is clearly saying also, don't forget the pshat here, although most translations don't abide by that.
Right. The opposite end of the spectrum was Philo. We talked about Philo, I think, briefly. What's that? No. Not Philo.
It's good.
Philo from Alexandria in the first century was of the allegorical to the extreme school, where he believed that nothing in the Torah should be taken literally. It's all allegory. So there is no Avram and Sarah. Avram and Sarah represent the intellect and the emotion, or whatever they represent, and everything that you read is just prototypes that are interacting with each other that have allegorical connotations for and that's. I think that's very dangerous, right? When you take allegory to the extreme to say there is no pshat, everything is allegory.
Your feet get off the ground and you can do bad stuff.
Yes, I think it's an unhealthy approach. I want to go back to what you were saying in terms of the double language, because Rabbi Akiva does say that Shir HaShirim is Kodesh HaKadoshim, right? And most of the translations or the explanations that I've heard for that, even the language of Shir HaShirim, is that it is the best song. Shir HaShirim is like the best of all the songs, just like Melech HaMelachim is the best of all the kings, right? Which I think is wrong. I think that's I think it's a mistranslation. I like what you're saying about it being personal. I have not heard that before.
I gotta roll that thing around in my head. It sounds intriguing. I just don't think I understand what you're saying 100%.
Well, the only thing in the parsha that the parsha talks about this week, Batal made all of the Kalim and the mitzvah in there, but the only one that it talks about that Vayas Batzalel was the Aram, correct? Because it was personal. That was personal to him. He took it and made it personal, which is the double language that we're dealing with here. Melech Machei Melachim, your personal God.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. How does that apply to Ayin Tachat Ayin?
Well, you're personal. You're making it personal.
I don't get it.
It's not money per se. It's not physical. It's not a physical thing. Shir HaShirim, the personal. You're making the song personal to you.
So
where does that idea come from? I'm sorry. Where'd you hear this?
One.
So I'd like to offer another approach to.
Not I mean, he didn't talk about. He talked about the parsha, but it's the same concept.
Okay.
In terms of the double lashon of like kodesh kadashim, I don't think it means the best of something.
It's not the best, the personal.
Right. Well, so
The
I
most
hear that approach.
characteristic of something.
I think it means the most of that thing, meaning kodesh
some
hakadashim is the
potential.
most kodesh of kodesh things. Hevel havolim, right, is not the best hevel; it's the most hevel of all the things.
Right.
So that would make Shir HaShirim
The
the most
songiest-
shir of all, right? The songiest of all songs.
I like how you wrote that here. The
Right.
songiest of songs.
Right. The question is, what does that mean? What does something like? What makes Shir HaShirim the most prototypical song of all the songs?
Right.
And that's not a question
so
I want to answer tonight.
Right. So are we going to discuss other shirim from Tanakh in context? Like, hey, let's look at Az Yashir and let's look at the Shir of Dvorah. And what?
Azinu.
And Hazinu. And like, right, the 7 shirim of Tanakh, like maybe there's some kind of clue there for like
What is
structurally or thematically
What are the
to say, hey,
components?
but this one that we're studying right now is the songiest. Like this one is going balls to the wall.
You have your homework cut out for you.
Sure.
Okay.